We are live. Perfect. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of SpitBallin with JT. On today's special guest is Miss Anna Cherry. She's recently been featured in a Cosmopolitan article, so you guys should check that out. The link will be in the description for this video. Hello, Anna. How are you?
Hello. Doing pretty good. I could say that.
Awesome. So your article's pretty spectacular there. That so what were you doing before you got into adult film work?
All right. Well, on short sort of time scale, I was in college, but overall in my life, I've been, I've traveled to America from a different country. I was born elsewhere, and then yeah, I was all over the States and went to college and then got into adult work. And a few years later, Cosmopolitan website wrote about it. So here we are.
But were you studying to be a neurologist at some point, or are you studying like? Because I know that was like the main thing in the
Close,
title.
close. It was. I originally basically went in for a psychology major in college, and then I switched to neuroscience about halfway through. So that caused all sorts of problems with having to take extra classes. And I think I went to college for maybe 4 years and a half. There's like an extra semester thrown in there. So I technically have a neuropsychology degree. It's a bit of a mix of neuroscience and psychology. So we have that. And I have it. I have my diploma and everything. So I technically finished it. And about halfway through my education, I started doing online work, adult online work, and that's how that whole thing started.
So yeah, your niche. Oh, we got a little bit of an echo there. No, I think it should be fine now. All right. Sorry about that.
Oh.
But I guess the niche that you kind of are in right now is the cosplay, the gaming, that nerd type of
You could say
avenue.
that. You could say that. And not just, because of my degree, but that is sort of related. Along with the STEM field territory comes my interest in, yeah, gaming and tabletop gaming, like nerdy things like D&D science. And yeah, I recently got into cosplay. It is, I mean, it's funny you say niche because we were just talking about that amongst ourselves because I did just launch a website, annacherry.com. And we're also working on creating kind of a studio model collective for cos porn, and not exclusively, but pretty heavily featuring cos porn, which is cosplay combined with porn.
Now that's going to be different than the parody stuff that's out there nowadays, right?
Right. It's definitely, I wouldn't consider that your Axel Brown or whatever standard of like having movies like Hook or things like that done in a parody style, or like Pirates. It's not exactly that, but sort of close, I suppose. Since a lot of it has to do with video game characters and cosplay, like comic book characters and anime characters, it's a bit more of an obscure genre, I guess,
Yeah.
that hasn't really been covered by, the Woodrocket and Axel Brown and other people who do parodies of like really popular features. While with us, it's more, I guess the whole aspect of cosplay and being a cosplayer, you approach it from wanting to embody the character, and you generally pick characters that resonate with you personally and that you also physically look like. At least, I do
Yeah,
that.
it's more of like a coming at it from a fan point of view instead of coming at it. Okay, well, what's a way we can poke fun of this instead of
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's embodying the character and then imagining what, sort of erotic adventures these characters might have. So you kind of sort of stay in character in a way, but it is also, porn. So I have worked with companies that do cosplay undressed. So you have a cosplay character that you always, is your waifu you fantasize about, and then you watch her get undressed as part of a striptease erotic Playboy style set. So that's sort of been my erotic bridging of cosplay and sex so far, but then I took it further in my own work and basically continued that concept of staying in character and cosplaying, but then also having sex. So yeah.
What would be like the easiest character? Like Mystique, I would figure, because she's kind of naked already.
Well, see, that's actually probably been one of the most difficult characters because you have to think about the body paint and the texturing of her skin. So if you want to embody her,
Yeah.
from a cosplay standpoint is actually really hard. But like the characters like Misty or any schoolgirl type, I know they've done probably Pokemon
Yeah.
variants, but the characters like that, like a little anime character, or Quiet from the video game series where they already have fairly, or Poison from Street Fighter, they don't have much
Hmm.
clothing on to begin with, and so that's sort of easy. Or like Kill la Kill's Nude Beach, they already pretty much naked. But then you can also have more iconic characters like, I don't know, Jasmine or Chun-Li, or someone who, legitimately was part of a formative sexual experience for many boys growing up, who now have reached an old age and are like, hey, that's really great, actually. So I see a lot of that with like comic book characters. Like I cosplay Phoenix a lot, like the traditional green and yellow. And then, of course, the original sort of Tomb Raider. I recently released a video on AnnaCherry.com. It's called The Womb Raider. And and it's basically, Tomb Raider with, licking her guns and doing unspeakable things to herself. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's the characters like that have a bit of a personality that you can really, that have grabbed people when they were, released originally. Those are the funnest for me to play.
Awesome. Awesome. Uh, let's focus on the gaming.
Sure.
Uh,
Another
what,
big
what
passion of mine.
yeah, what kind of games do you like to play?
Well, categories or specifics? Because we could be
We
here
can
a
get
while.
specific.
We'll be here a while. Well, if you watch my Twitch at all, I do stream Heroes of the Storm probably most frequently. And before that, it was League. So MOBAs do kind of take up a big part of my life right now. But I do also really like RPG, FPS types. Bioshock series was always a favorite of mine until in like Infinite. I think that it was fun. It was fun. But I felt like the second one was almost better because it had multiplayer and a lot more compelling storyline. And I felt like the third one broke off from the traditional, like, irrational games concepts of pitting ideologies against each other. And then it just was just Booker and his daughter, and I was like, what? Okay, whatever. But I still really enjoyed that, and I just been streaming that recently. But other games like Skyrim, Bethesda, Fallout is a big favorite of
Yeah,
mine.
I've been hooked on Fallout, and I just picked up that Far Cry Primal. That is quite fun. I didn't think I was gonna like it because it was I picked that over the Division, and I was like, okay, I'll play it for a couple of days. If I don't like it, I can always just go back and exchange it. But
There you
no, I've been playing it for like 4 days straight.
I've been curious about both Far Cry and Uncharted. I haven't dipped my toes into those, but I do have a lot of like appreciation for Halo. The Borderlands series is a big favorite of mine. The new
Yes.
Tomb Raider is great. I'm actually still haven't finished Halo 4. I don't know what happened there. It's still in the, well, I do know what happened. The problem with Halo is that the save points are really far apart. Okay, you have to go through a really long time of a mission, especially on hardcore modes or like the hardest difficulty, and it takes forever to actually get to a save point that the game remembers. Otherwise, you lose all your progress if you have
That's
life to do.
one of the games that I have missed the most since not having an Xbox. It's like hell for me. I have PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3, but nothing compares to like old school Halo because
Hmm.
it and it used to be a passion of mine to just sit there with my buddies and sit in my buddy's basement at his mom's house and play Halo all night, and then at the crack of dawn go outside and walk over to my place. That was it. But
It's really funny you say that because whenever they were doing research on, now that we have the Xbox One and the PS4, they're connected to the internet and connected to Pornhub. that people do porn searches on their consoles, and they found that Xbox users search for things like MILF and and mom a lot. So that was just really funny that you said that. But no, I'm a big fan of the Xbox, all of it, because I started with Xbox modded version. That's when I first played Halo 1 and 2, because they were like downloaded to the Xbox, and I was like, felt like
Yeah.
a little hacker badass having this modded Xbox that I couldn't hook up to the network because it get
With the
fucked.
LED
Um,
lights and the
Oh
behind the
yeah, it was great,
thing
and
like
like
that.
Prince of
Oh
Persia, all that good stuff on it, and then I went into the 360, and that's been pretty much my staple gaming system. I do have a PS2 Slim that I play some Final Fantasy games on, because Final
yeah.
Fantasy X was like it, and I've been trying to play games before that, so I'm like playing 9 currently, and then I ended up
My
playing
favorite
7
is
on Steam.
7. 7
Well,
is my favorite.
everybody of a certain age group, everybody loves 7, and I haven't played it yet, at least not all the way through. But for me, it's 10. I don't know what it is about that one.
Tifa Lockhart was like in so many of my fucking wet dreams when I was like
And I
13 and
cosplay,
14.
and I'm about to probably wear her again for upcoming convention, and that's another good example of a character that's really easy to shoot in for
Yeah,
cosplay, because the outfit is already like not that
exactly.
large.
She
So,
was in a t-shirt and short jeans the whole game. I don't
yeah.
think she ever changes outfits the whole time.
No, in Advent Children, they gave her this weird leather long trench situation, but that's like a anime, I
Just to make
guess.
her hotter. So,
Yep, gave her some leather.
what are your thoughts on how the whole competitive gaming situation has gone, especially with Call of Duty being like the top? I don't want to say top game because I know Dota and League of Legends and all those games have the huge tournaments too. But the Call of Duty I've known has really kind of taken over with like they're filling up stadiums pretty much with just people watching, and the prize money is outrageous.
Yeah, you're talking about like eSports?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, they my exposure to all that was through League actually. They were there was like 160,000 people that were, watching it live in the stadium. And
Jesus.
they had like the prize was either like 1 or 3 million. It was just a massive amount. And that was League, either the first or second or third season, one of those. And it was like, what is even happening? But playing the game myself, MOBA in particular, is actually a lot more difficult than an FPS, I think, because you don't not only have to have your reaction time like you do in FPS, but you also have to strategize with the rest of your
Yeah,
team
I was
and
about to
with
say
the
that.
map, and knowing the timing of when to defend turrets or attack or retreat, based on 1,000 million different characters and their interactions. So it didn't surprise me that people were battling for that amount of money. But I have been kind of watching this esports become a thing in the past 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and
Yeah.
it's really been encouraging, for the whole. It's like a free love evolution, the revolution, whatever thing in the 70s, but for like nerds. There's like massive
It's
nerd
gone
club.
mainstream. That's the thing.
Exactly. It caught on, and everyone is jumping on the bandwagon now.
Awesome. So I want to jump back to
Mhm.
the adult business a little bit here. I've spoken with Mercedes Carrera. She's the only other girl I know in the adult industry who has the smarts like you to at least go out there and speak somewhat like professionally on certain topics about whether it's coming like the adult world or even scientific issues, whether it's because I know she's more aerospace and you're more psychology. I know that's the difference, but it's just what are your thoughts about girls like yourself and her getting into the adult industry over the stereotypical female?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a thing. I'm not
Because
really sure. Mhm.
it's quite shocking to a lot of people once they actually look past the initial pornographic images and get to know the person. They're quite surprised that, oh, well, like what made you choose this line of work, or da 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 da. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah, I think some of that has to do with, that not just internet, but kind of exposure to. alternative means of earning income. And there's also kind of a thing we have in common with Mercedes and I is we're a bit on the like the autism spectrum. So there is an element of being a woman who is scientifically minded because of that, but is also sexual partially because of that as well. And those two are not at odds as much. And there's also no restrictive ideologies. Thankfully, we both, escaped the more puritanical and like you should be only valued for your knowledge and
Yeah.
ideologies. So we were able to be comfortable with their sexuality enough to showcase it because there's a variety of reasons. In fact, Mercedes, pretty sure she got into adult industry because of some of the recession rollbacks, cutbacks of jobs.
Yeah.
And I myself was in college, and that's not a cheap proposition either. So it's interesting that changing economic pressures is actually one of the reasons that made people like us look to other sources of income that where we also get to have fun. While in the past it used to be only women of a more party nature, so to speak,
They
that
have a certain ilk, I would say.
yeah, they relied more on their sociality, their relationships with people, their looks. And so those are the ones that usually got into porn and were more stereotypical vapid blonde or whatever.
I think though a lot of those stereotypes are being broken nowadays, and I'm not just holding like you two up as examples of that, but even when it comes to just the type of woman who gets into that line of work nowadays, it's not I was molested or I went through some sort of trauma as a child, therefore I'm going to do this line of work. A lot of people are just saying, you know what, I got to pay tuition. Let me make a few bucks and then I'll get out. And whether or not they get out or not is their own prerogative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that porn gets coupled with
Yes.
that people went through because, that does happen and people do go through that. And there are creative people and artists who sort of became who they are partially because of what they went through. So I think there's a lot of bleed through between those groups on that sort of front. But I think a lot of that mentality and the thoughts that we, or the feelings we have about porn stars and strippers or even prostitutes is kind of part of propaganda. It's kind of an outdated and perhaps never even true. It wasn't ever really true necessarily, unless we're talking about like people who are absolutely, down on their luck. They have, addiction problems and they're willing to make a buck in absolutely any way possible. If we're talking about that sort of representative of adult work or prostitution, that's really not accurate because it's, it's a legitimate business, especially mainstream porn. It's like Hollywood of adult work. It's really just as much, pretense and pseudo stuff and actresses and money. So it's really a big industry. But yeah, we see people changing, obviously, with the way things have been going with the world. And, the baby boomers created a certain kind of generation after them and so on and so forth. We have people that enter porn that are very different than the people who used to enter it. The appeal is different. And I've seen personally anyway, a lot of really nerdy sort of people who also end up being models and doing adult work. So it's kind of interesting, but I have met actually a lot of like introverted, awkward, unpopular nerds who then later ended up being basically just drop dead gorgeous, models, and they still are the same person,
a lot.
but they look like that. Yeah, no, that's actually the case of me and my partner and a lot of people we know. It's like this subcategory of porn performers that are actually, very intelligent and kind of, socially awkward maybe, and maybe weren't the most popular kids and were kind of nerds, but they got their, late bloomers, I guess, got their shit together and perform and you get paid for their looks. And it's just fascinating to me.
Wow. So how many years have you been out of college for?
Let's see. I graduated in 2010. Yes. 2010.
Okay, so it's been a few years. Well, what are your take on like the recent news of how students are behaving with people on campuses, the safe spaces and all this thing towards free speech and that.
Right. Okay. So,
I want to. It's a touchy subject. I know.
well, I mean, I don't think it should be, but there are definitely reactionaries on both sides of the aisle on this issue, so to speak, that make it a touchy subject. But in my personal experience, okay, so as a free speech advocate and a liberal, basically psychologist, psychoneuroscientist, person who is interested in social justice, but the actual kind of social justice, and interested in making sure that people feel loved and trusted and happy. I am all for safe spaces as a concept, but the way they've been used from what I see, filtering through the news about the colleges that have certain speakers come in, and so they designate safe rooms to hide yourself from facts, those hurtful, terrible facts, or having safe spaces as kind of almost a response or a way of fighting back to being educated. I'm really not happy with seeing it as that. I'm all for having a safe space. I think, in fact, one of the biggest problems is that we have a lot of safe spaces that are women only and don't really have such consideration for men. So that's kind of an issue that I take with safe spaces in that regard. But on the other hand, we are seeing people who are using their feelings or their emotions or not being heard by words or facts as a way to not learn things. Like there was the issue with the rape law that was being taught in law school that one of the students wanted not taught because it was upsetting her, it was triggering. So, or not watching Christina Hoff Sommers' lectures because even though Christina Hoff Sommers identifies as a feminist, she's also a factual feminist. So she brings up facts or an information that is unpalatable to the way current modern day feminism is going. And so they, boo her lectures and leave that offensive, a space for a safer space, which in that context, safe space just means dumb space. So I have
any space other than the place I'm in.
It's quite exactly. It's really not. They're misusing the term and they're misusing the concept and the privilege of having a safe space for something that is making reactionary people want to get rid of the idea of a safe space and laugh at the idea of a safe space altogether. And it's like, well, that's just retarded too. So find a happy middle, people. Like it's not just one or the other. It exists for a reason. Use it for that reason and no reason other than that. When you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed or whatever, you need some quiet space to calm down, safe space, great. But don't be using it as a political
weapon.
Punch again. Thank you, weapon against the opposition that you don't agree with.
It's getting to be quite ridiculous, both down in the States and in Canada. It's the state of free speech is it's ridiculous. My last guest, in fact, Mike Ward, he's a stand-up comic. He does both French and English speaking stand-up, and he told a joke about a kid who was he was a Make-A-Wish kid. He got to sing for the Pope and the Prime Minister of Canada and all this thing. And this was years ago. The premise of the joke was, I thought we gave the Make-A-Wishes to the kids who are about to die. Why isn't he dead yet? I'm going to go kill him myself. And it was a joke meant to make people laugh. People did laugh. And apparently the father got wind of what was said, pressed charges against him in the Human Rights Commission of Canada. They went after him for $80,000. He fought it, and now he's waiting for his judgment. If they find him guilty, he'll have to pay a $180,000 fine. If he's found innocent, then he's still out $100,000 in lawyers' fees. So it's just like let's just hope that at least the last place where free speech is actually free, which is America, it doesn't get to this extent, because you're even having situations where there's a comic out in Vancouver who had two lesbians in the front row. They were being a little too public affectionity. They were drawing attention to them instead and taking it away from the person on stage. And the guy's just like, well, I guess I see why you two are lesbians, because no guy would want to fuck you. He had to pay 10 grand in fines for just making an insult at a comedy show when people are distracting people from the show. So it's just like,
yeah, that's the weird thing about America too, though, and I guess Canada, maybe the Western world in general, that I just have a hard time grasping because of being from the USSR and moving here when I was 13 or so, 13 and a half, moving to America, that is. I had very different experiences growing up of what is litigatable and what isn't, and just the litigious nature of Americans that I won't even address well, I mean, I will later address the fact that it's comedians and free speech and how they should be frying bigger fish. But just for starters, just the aspect of being able to request or demand a certain amount of money because a person said something that offended you or hurt your feelings or in some way caused you amorphous damage. I mean, there's one thing about like libel and things like that where you clearly can provably state this is affecting my business earnings, what you said about me is negatively affecting my livelihood. Then yeah, and if you prove it's maliciously intended, sure, you can litigate there, fine.
Yeah.
But we're talking about people, hate speech a lot of times is being used way too loosely. And same as, assault with words, things like that. That's when you have to really
start. The word racist has been diluted so much.
So racist?
Yeah. Like the word itself, racist, is just become so diluted because people are using it in out of context, and it's.
Are you talking about like saying Muslims, people who are against Muslim refugees are being accused of being racist? Muslims.
Yeah, like that. That's just one example. Yeah,
I think that's kind of a cheap shot, but because the concept is you are being otherist, and there's just no other word for it. So I think that people who are like, that's not even a word, they're not even a race, I think they're being petulant little dicks because they know what those people mean that are accusing them of racism.
Yeah, but then you got like the argument with the Muslim aspect. I get the argument that the people against refugees or whatever word they want to use for them.
So that's fine though. But I mean, we're talking about over the past 10 years or so, I've watched new words become more dangerous, or not dangerous, but more carrying more social weight than others, where racist actually, and I lived in the Mid-South for a while of the United States, that's, has the word South in it, meaning there's a lot of minorities there, and so much so that they are the majority and the white people are the minority. So I've been kind of all around the United States, and the word racist used to be the absolute worst thing you could accuse anyone a decade ago. Like,
and it's lost its value.
He could be a baby eating, alien lizard, and people wouldn't care about it nearly as much as they cared about being a racist. But now we start seeing things like misogynist, maybe, or maybe some other words that are starting to creep in among particular populations that are just the worst. And so it's it's kind of good because like I didn't necessarily think it was worth to have racism associated with such a strong thing. Yeah, I mean, obviously racism is bad, but
no doubt
it has its reasons. I understand where it comes from, why it comes from. Sometimes stereotypes are true. We need to lighten up about the whole goddamn thing and just treat each other lovingly and chill the fuck out.
Definitely.
But we also see, that's why I call them social jobbery warriors, because people are really attached to the SJW terminology, but I believe they're not social justice warriors. They're mob justice warriors at best. And the word jobbery means using social position for personal gain. So it's a great old word. And because that's what they do. They use their social position and their moral grandstanding and virtue signaling as a way to beat people, over the head emotionally and socially, and then get ahead while fucking over others. And they have created a really negative environment, and I don't really see them all that much more different from tyrants that they rail against. It's very much the horseshoe theory. So back to your original point of the free speech thing. We see comedians going after, that was like my second point, going after comedians and people who are just basically on a street corner on a box or equivalent of that on the internet or, on a stage somewhere with a mic, going after them instead of going after people who are provably violating human rights, like when we're talking about in the issues with Palestine, or perhaps the way that certain banks and loan companies are treating people who have owned their own land for like 30 years, but because of mortgage issues, they're being kicked out. I mean, we're having people that are actually being affected in a horrible way by people who spew ideologies that are really, really harmful, and nobody's going after them because they're monetarily connected or they're politically connected or they're really big deal, and nobody dares to, go at the giant. But it's easy to go after the little guy, especially when there's a bunch of money involved in it because of the litigious nature of the states or North America, I guess. So it's just really disheartening to see us come to this. And I fully blame it on the fact that George Carlin died. Because after he died, we lost our moral police. We lost the person who was like, stop taking shit too seriously, like, do the right thing, stop being stupid, stop believing in dumb ideas, and lighten up about everything, and free speech. And then now here's where we are.
Well, for instance, I was seeing today that Ralphie May had his show canceled because there was a Native American rap group that took something that he was saying they took the setup to his punchline for a joke and then cut the punchline and posted that. And it's just basically him going off for about 30 seconds about how horrible Native Americans are and that nobody forced you guys to drink 150 years ago and this, that, and the other thing. And it's just awful, hateful shit that he's saying. But the punchline is, he's like, I'm so upset with Indians. I'm upset that Dances with Wolves beat out Goodfellas for the Oscar for Best Picture in 1992. Like, that's the punchline for the joke. He's not meaning to be that hateful towards Native Americans whatsoever. And he had to come out and apologize and this, that, and the other thing. But the city that he was performing in owned the venue that he was performing at that night, and they pulled his show because they said we couldn't guarantee your safety. Like that's. If that's the state of free speech in America, then the last bastion of free speech is always stand-up comedy. If you can't perform and people are going to actually take what you're saying and twist it out of context so much so that people are losing their revenue and their livelihood, we're fucked.
Yeah, it's a canary in the coal mine for free speech. They say that a lot with porn too, and recently there's been a lot of issues of them trying to regulate porn through condom laws and things like that.
Yeah, with the law in LA, yeah.
So they've tried it multiple times in different ways, and ironically, it's a gay AIDS foundation guy whose LA district has the most AIDS instances, mainly due to gay sex, and it has nothing to do with porn.
Well, isn't it a fact known among the porn industry performers that almost like a good majority percentage of the gay performers are HIV positive in some way, shape, or form?
I don't know anything about that. The only thing I know about the scene of the gay porn is that once an actor goes to gay porn, he is never really allowed back into straight porn. Nobody will hire him again. So I've never interacted with the gay porn community, so I honestly have no idea at all about that.
I heard something along the lines of that, but I'm not exactly sure of the numbers. But I know that
straight porn. They're trying to regulate straight porn, and straightness is not a cause for AIDS all that much compared to.
Well, the straight porn industry hasn't had somebody test positive since 2004, and there's positive tests always coming out from the gay side of things. I know that much. But it's another one of those things that if stand-up comedy and pornography if anything happens to them where they're regulated and they can't be as unrestricted as they need to be, then society, specifically Western society, because that's where we are, is doomed, and it's doomed to head towards I don't know. I don't want. I don't think it'll go back to the Puritan state that it was, like 200-300 years ago. But I don't know what it's headed for.
There's two things about that, but before I go to that, I want to address the transmission rate thing you were mentioning. That yeah, the adult industry, from what I understand, there's no difference between testing in the straight porn versus gay porn. It's all handled by the same company. So I'm not really sure where you got the idea about gay porn stars and diseases, because that's provably not true. In terms of it's not been something that's been passed or in any way caught on set of
No. That's not what I was saying. That's not what I meant. And if that's what it came across as, that's not what I meant at all.
Right, because yeah, that's not a thing. So I just want to throw that out there.
No. That's not what I meant. If that's how it came across, as it was misconstrued. My bad.
Yeah, there was recently a case of transmission that this company was using as ammo against, porn performers who did not want to use condoms in their scenes. And it had to do with a transmission that happened completely 100% provably offset. And yeah, as you were saying, at one point in the last 8 to 10 years, there has not been one single case of any STD transmission, and especially not AIDS or HIV on a porn set. So the fact that the condom law that they're trying to introduce, it also would remove some of the testing. So in fact, they're actually considering or planning on making adult industry less safe by removing the rigorous testing equipment and procedures that are currently employed. And so there are definitely people who want to bash porn, and they don't understand how it works because they've never been on a porn set. So they don't know that literally every 14 days at the minimum, you have to go and test. And then you do not shoot at all whatsoever until it is absolutely clear through a database, and everybody signs off on it, and you inspect genitals, and you do a variety of things that, other performers have spoken about that ensure through a variety of measures that you are dealing with healthy people, not to mention the science every 14 days it's in. So it's actually kind of, understandable that there's been no transmission for so long, because the system does work and it is really freaking good. And the pool of people is not that big that do porn necessarily compared to the rest of the, population. Not to mention that a lot of them actually end up dating each other too. So, so yeah, there's that. But, when you're talking about the, back to the concept of free speech being under attack, or, we are seeing two things. On one hand, when comedians are not allowed, like they said, they can't guarantee our safety because people have an issue with free speech. Well, when you're that militant about ideas, that's a problem. And I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that it's sort of misdirection by the powers that be, because people are stressed as fuck due to economic reasons, and a lot of actually natural resources reasons as well. There's not only the oil situations, but the war, of course, for the oil, because it is becoming scarce, but we're talking about deforestation and what fisheries being completely fished out by 2050. We're talking about global warming. There's a lot of fucking stressors that are freaking people out. And instead of actually coming together in any way, stopping this wheel that keeps turning, they take that aggression and they isolate it onto their political opponents or whoever, because people who are in power, whatever, frequently it's the GOP and the conservative party in America, but whoever they are, there are people who have interests of really wealthy people in mind instead of the common individual. So you frequently see them misdirecting people's anger towards their neighbor and towards, hey, look, that guy over there, he hates your favorite show. And so, you end up fighting with that guy instead of organizing together and being like, hey, how about you stop taking lobbyists' interests over what actual human beings who are dying of lead poisoning from their water want? Just a thought.
That's well said. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I got on a soapbox, sorry, but I appreciate it.
All right, and I appreciate you joining me for this. This has been awesome. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable.
All right. Maybe we can have you back on, especially if I have one of my comedian buddies in. I'll let you two guys debate it off.
There you go. I consider you said bait off. No, my I consider myself a sit down comic because I joke a lot when I can sitting down. So it's a Mobius joke that's funny only to me really. But so yeah, no, that'll be great.
Awesome. Thank you. And where can people find you?
Well, Twitter is a good place, but you can find a lot of my social links on annacherry.com. You just like look around the screen for clickable stuff, and in one of the corners, there's going to be YouTube and Tumblr and Twitter, and most of those are Anna Cherry on top, just like my Twitter handle. So that's for Twitch and for YouTube, and those are main three places where I gather. And annacherry.com, as always, for my adult work. Or if you're interested in sponsoring my YouTube content or conventions and cosplay, then of course there's patreon.com/AnnaCherry. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.